Hello people, it is I again. I've been on my little adventure today, had a bit of free time, so I went out and about, in with a shout, to the various courthouses. Today I thought, hey, let's go see some Crown Court activity. I don't know what the Crown Court would be in certain jurisdictions, but it's the one up from the local criminal vetting court, which in England is the magistrates' court. Some places I think is referred to as the district court, but you'd have to check where the lowest kind of first point of call for the legal society to get its crimes, specifically dealing with crimes. But anyway, one step up from that, you get these lovely kind of buildings. This is called the Crown Court. And so once you go into the riffraff court of the magistrates, you get filtered in eventually, depending on whether they can give you they can deal with you there. I won't go into how they deal with you too much in this video, but it's just more about process, this one. And then if you're no good there, or you're not pleading not guilty, you have to go for trial for certain amounts, and the trial will be held up here most of the time in Crown Court. And Crown Court, look at this building. This is in Kingston. It's a lovely Crown Court. It's got the royal heraldry here and the Crown Court. So this is operated by a society that deals with crimes. And the more and more, if you watch my tomato video, which is basically what is crime, what is civil, you know, there's not really a lot of difference between it. And I also had a chat on the phone with someone regarding their interpretation of what the difference is. Because if you recall, I found it very hard to find a criminal prosecution lawyer, right? But it was very easy, very, very easy to find a criminal defense lawyer. And the more I'm thinking about that and the more I'm understanding is that this society that is set up through the power of the legislature, which is 1275, technically is when the legal memory starts, and the legal society and the parliament and the barons and the city people all got together and started administrating the country properly, let's just say. And started creating these titles of justices of the peace and all kinds of stuff like that, just for the good running of the country. This is their society's headquarters, if you like. Not this Crown Court. I'm talking about the Houses of Parliament and how it's developed a king and important people, influential people, whether they be hereditary lords or rich merchants. Essentially, what it is: rich people or hereditary lords, rich or the rich. And that's basically how that evolves. So the Crown Court is very much that arm of the government's justice system. So it's looking at people who are disturbing the nation, disturbing the peace, disturbing people's right to life, people's property. So you're thinking about things like, you know, larceny and all that other kind of stuff. And that all comes under crimes. I don't know if I've still got it up. It might be worth just looking at this. I went to this is what I got off Wikipedia. So it's a list of offences under common law, the common law of the government, the legal society. And look, so you've got murder, manslaughter. So you see here, there's no real code 4962.935 of the Californian whatever silly code that they keep going on about. You see here, it's like murder, manslaughter, mayhem, all this kind of stuff. And look, lo and behold, on this list here, whether by accident or by purpose, trespass. And then you've got trespass here. This is an area of criminal law or tort law, broadly divided into three groups. It's an area. Trespass is an area of criminal law. Well, I think it's more of a civil law, because it encompasses what is really the law, the simplified law, which is threats, assaults, which is not touching your body but threatening you in some manner, doesn't necessarily have to touch you. Battery, which is the physical, like touching of someone, wounding, mayhem, it's like maiming, basically cutting your bits of your body off, like an acid attack would be a classic example in my opinion of a mayhem, and false imprisonment. So all these things are torts, or trespasses, more importantly, trespass. And that comes from obviously the word trespass in the Bible. These are things that you shouldn't do to your fellow man. And these can be processed, as far as I'm aware, through the County court. God, I lost my words there. So, but all these other things start getting added to the list. I think there's even like hate crime now and whatever kind of stuff. I don't know, hate crime. Don't know. All kinds of fun. So they can add to their own list as they see fit. And they can remove from their own list as they see fit. So what does that got to do with Kingston? So I thought I'd go to Kingston because I thought, you know what? I was reading about indictments recently and I was quite excited about the quarter sessions, which is, again, was another arm of the government's administration of justice back in the good old days, which has been going on since 12 something century-wise, the 12th or 13th century, let's say. And obviously they abolished it and they got rid of it after the World War II, which is very kind of them, and then they replaced it because they basically did a lot of harmonisation of all of these, or consolidation is probably a better word, of all of these different courts, particularly in 1885, I believe, was when the High Court was officially established in the Royal Courts of Justice. And with the High Court, what they did, they pulled in a lot of these loose ends of different jurisdictions and different nuances of courts and laws and stuff. And they just went, right, let's just consolidate it all. That's what it was. So it wasn't really a conspiracy. It was more about, look, this is complicated shit. It's been going on for too long. Let's just get it really concise, really streamlined, so that we can administrate this more effectively. Training and competency can be increased or sped up and increased, and we all don't have massive headaches trying to deal with this nonsense. So that's essentially what happens, and that's what gave birth to our lovely Royal Courts of Justice, which is this one here. So this is what they decided to build. Oh, glorious building. But again, let's go back to Kingston. Because this is where I went today, which is a very modern, slick, lovely building. Clean inside. I was like, oh, as soon as I said in my previous videos, if you ever go to a courthouse which is really pristine and clean and lovely, you're probably in the wrong place. And I got that feeling as soon as I came in here. I mean, it was lovely. I thought, oh, is this a public building? Is this really going to be for public use? Or is this more for an elitist kind of societal use? You decide. But anyway, so I went in there. I thought, screw it, whatever, give it benefit of the doubt. Let's go and sit around. So I sat around. And, I saw the space for the jury. Now, because this is where you have jury trials in England, and I'm kind of like realising now, trial by jury is really more of a defence for the people against the state. For the people against the state, and there's numerous times in history where the kings tried to punish people, and it's gone through history, and the jury's been brought out, and the jury says, no, there's nothing to answer for here. We don't believe this person's done anything wrong. So it's essentially a despot defence, and it's using the common sense of the common man to smell the hummus, so that your internal gut feeling will determine if there's something amiss, something isn't quite right here, something's awry, the king wants this guy dead because he knows something, he's doing something to annoy the king, which may not necessarily be unlawful. It might actually be for the benefit of society as a whole, but the king doesn't like this guy because he's exposing a secret or something in a non-blackmaily kind of way. There could have been all kinds of stuff. But just there's plenty of examples through history that you can Google about juries defence of the individual's liberty, I would say the people's liberty, or the liberty of those who are accused, by people who are in such power and influence that they have essentially control over the fact that they've built this building, and they're bringing in suspected criminals, in to face crimes against their society. So anyway, I went in and had a little look around, sat in the box, looking at the jury bit, and I think, this is all very nice, they've got space for a jury. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is good. I had a little sit around. It's nice, everyone's dressed up in their black garbs, the barristers are sitting on there. Now that's another little trick, isn't it? When you get barristers are speaking, and you've got to think about rights of audience and who actually has rights of audience. And I'll point you all back to a Judge Judy show. Judge Judy always nails people who have no eyewitness account, no first-hand knowledge, as it's called, to commit to the record, because as a judge or as a judiciary, you can't have hearsay and nonsense going onto the record unless of course you change the rules, which has recently been done, to allow hearsay and nonsense to go on the record if the judge sees fit. But in a normal court of law, which isn't being manipulated by a society to their own ends, you can't accept hearsay. You know, you can accept some character references because people have first-hand knowledge of people, and you know, not knowing that he's a douchebag, and they say no, he's a good guy. I've never had any issues with him. He's always paid his debts on time. He cuts his grass every week, and he cuts his neighbour's grass. He picks up the rubbish outside his house, all that kind of stuff. He's a good guy. So you're given first-hand knowledge of what you believe this person to be like, so that if he's brought up in front of a jury, and juries have got to make a decision whether or not this guy's a douchebag, they can listen to, you know, as many character witness references as they can and say, well, of course they're going to say that because they're biased, they're the friends, they know him, but obviously from what we've heard versus the evidence, it does seem out of character for him to have done something like this. So it can obviously sway the jury one way or the other. Yeah, so that's essentially how this works. But like I said, in a Judge Judy kind of setting, you don't have anyone speaking who has any hearsay evidence to submit, even if they come into the court to sit next to their friend who's standing in front of Judge Judy. Judge Judy will say to them, "Did you see anything? Were you there?" No, Judge, I wasn't there. I didn't see anything. Sit down, shut up. She'll say that a lot of the time on her show. Sit down, shut up, be quiet, I'm not interested in what you got to say. And she'll crack on with trying to get the facts from the people who actually were there, who it did pertain to. And think about a barrister now. When a barrister stands up in court, he wasn't there. Unless it was unless the case is about the barrister as a man, not as the barrister as the person, the persona. You know, so when you have a barrister for the defence, a barrister for the prosecution, and then behind them they have their solicitor legal team behind them, and then you have up on high you have their societal member judges who have been barristers for God knows how long, who are then very closely linked to the legislation that comes through. From all these societies, whether it be the Bar Association, the Law Society, and there's another one as well, the legal something or other, and also the government. All these people are getting together to make good, sound legislation for the smooth and proper running of society. Whose society? You may have heard the term, the big society. So that's basically what this is. This building functions for the administration of the big society. Now, what happens if you're not in the big society? Well, they'd love you to come and join and be part of the big society, but if you're not in the big society, you have an alternative option, and this is where the law, the proper law, is administrated, as well as civil law, because obviously they've determined that everything has to be civil or criminal. So let's pretend we're a piece of shit peasant boy, and this is what our courthouses look like. This is just around the corner from Kingston. I walk around the corner, across the road, boom, here you are. Let's just see. And this is something Carl Lenzer says, you know, when you go into like the big expensive federal buildings or whatever kind of crime buildings, they're always doing it they always make them look like this kind of building. You know, look at that. Ooh, shiny, sunny day, even the weather's nice on this day. This is in the middle of winter in England, but you can get the difference between the courthouse. Just a brick building built out of purpose and convenience for the people. Yeah, so it's like in that respect, it's very much like a public library. Yeah, and this is it in the summer, where it's strategically placed behind three rather overgrowing trees. So it's like, yeah, we really, you know, because the same people who are running this building are running the streets, the roads, the administration of their society's facilities, if you like, and they also get to decide to stick 4 big planted trees outside the front of the public building, which is where the civil activity happens, but also where the law of the land, the people, can resolve their disputes, and therefore it's very much, this probably has to be accounted for properly, dare I say. So that's why, well, we only have this much money to build for it, so we can't do this, but we can certainly do this. Now notice they both got the royal heraldry on top, because prosecutions are normally, like in a criminal case, I think prosecutions are sometimes done in the king's name, so it's like the king and the land and versus this wrongdoer. Sometimes you hear like the state versus such and such in America, you know, the state versus John Doe, or state versus Richard Roe. So in England, it's very much the law and the justice system stems from the king. This is the king. right here. That is the king. And also the king, if there's a courthouse where people can be fined or imprisoned for contempt or punished in some sort of court of law, then it becomes the king's jurisdiction. You can't set up jurisdictions where you can fine or imprison, where the king immediately superintends those kind of courthouses. You can't. Private courts and private chambers are very much a no-go. You can't punish people without the king's knowledge, if you like, the king's oversight. And that again harks back to ancient times. So that's why we have it here, and that's why they are allowed to have it there. So anyway, after going into the Kingston Crown Court and sitting around, had a nice little sit-down session, watched a bit of stuff, telephone conferencing into the courthouse. So they love their hearsay evidence and people not being present, not sworn in under oath. They just accept. Obviously, the technology has moved in such a way that they'll accept the liability for having people appear via phone or telephone and whatnot. Saw some of a guy who did actually get pulled in. Wasn't anything exciting really. It was nice just to sit down and I spent some time sitting there. I just sat in the courtroom looking at the jury box, and I thought, imagine if it's good to sit down and see the layout of the room. Just sit down where the public sit, where the bad guys sit. Or the accused, shall we say. Where's the judge sitting? Where's the prosecution sitting? Where's the defence sitting? How much seating have they got? And you'll notice in a lot of these crown courts and criminal courts, they have a shed ton of seating in front of before the judge. They have like a ridiculous. There's almost as much seating in front of the judge as there is in the public gallery. It's that many seats for the defence and the prosecution counsel, because obviously when you're bringing in all these wordsmiths, these artists in language and words and code decipherers, sometimes you need quite a few people. So that's why they have so many seats. And if you've ever been to the Central Criminal Court, that being the Old Bailey, you will see how many barristers and people they have running that show. It's insane, like the amount of people that they've got in it. So I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. And it's very expensive, obviously, to run and administrate, but they need sometimes to have that much sophisticated knowledge, because every one man cannot learn the entire code books. You see how thick those law books are, so you need space to get all those parties in to help and aid and assist the judge. And the judge asks the barristers about points of law. The barristers help the judge understand the points of law, because I think when I was there was an issue about joint indictments, and only one party being there because the other guy was told not to be there, so they had to in court redraft an indictment and hand it off to separate the parties, to then have one party on one indictment and the other party on another indictment, so it was no longer joint. But that was quite a specific nuance that was happening in the courthouse, where the judge and the barrister needed to exchange information to help each other kind of get their heads around what they're actually doing, because it actually wasn't really quoted very much in their books. But now, because that issue's come up, they'll amend their codes. They'll probably have an entry in their book at some point about this and what to do, and therefore if anyone else comes up with this, they'll have it in a code book for them to reference. That's how it works, essentially. So anyway, there we go. That's my experience of Crown Court. So after sitting there for a while, I thought, hey, let's go to the desk. Let's go to the very much like I'd done before in the magistrates' court. Let's go to the desk and try and get this indictment thing going on, because in the good old days with the quarter sessions, people would bring their indictments in before the grand jury. The grand jury would hear it and say true bill or not true bill, and then the game's on or the game's off. So here I thought, well, they merged the court sessions with the Crown Court, apparently. And so I thought, well, maybe there's still access to the public, the people, to bring a claim, an indictment before the Crown Court. So I went in there, and now the thing is with the clerks and the administrators in this building, they don't have legal qualified people. There's only a few people here who are legally qualified, because the judges and the staff are like of the highest caliber. They know what they're doing in terms of the legal procedures. All the judges here are fully, they've been barristers for a number of years and they've gone on to be judges. And in the public service counter, they're quite happy. They're quite, they're very friendly actually. I'll give them high marks. They're very friendly. And eventually, one guy came up got talking to him. I talked about the lady first. Right, this one lady, she didn't really know what she was talking about, unfortunately, but she was still very pleasant to deal with. And I said to her she asked me about what the nature of the crime was. And I said, oh, it's probably a breach of peace. Keep it simple, breach of the peace. And she goes, oh, breach of peace, that's a civil tort. And I was like, oh, really? That's a civil matter. And I was like, okay, all right. So she said, yeah, you should take that around to the county court around the corner. I said, okay, where's that? She goes, come out of here, turn left, whoop, walk around the corner, bing, find this place. So I thought, you know what? Hey, let's do that. I'll take you at your word, so at least I can go here, because it's only a short walk, and then I can go there and I can come back and tell her, well, you told me a load of bullshit, they've sent me away, or this has happened, that's happened. And then obviously I'll put them more on the spot. So I went around here. Now this was an amazing experience. Now bear in mind now, again, it's coming back to, this is where the people get their I wouldn't really say much justice, because the law is not really about sticking people in little cages. The law is more about debt, about, you know, you stole my car, I need this much money in compensation. It's more about compensation, really. So yeah, you can steal my car. I've got no problem if you steal my car, mate, but you're going to have to give me fair and just compensation for the act of stealing my car. But that's more of a crime again. So these people would jump on that with about, hey, we can deal with that. We can punish them. We can put them in prison. We have these lovely cells that we can stick people in. But it's like, well, you know, to be fair, I could go down that route, but you know, it's not really nice sticking people in prison. So I'd rather just get the guy to give my money back and compensate me for the loss of use of my car, and then I'll go about my day, and he can hopefully learn his lesson and not do it again. So that's it. So I went in here, security guard, same procedure on the door, you know, metal detector. But before I even got into the building, there was like, I looked at it in this little foyer entrance area. You can see the public desk just as you walk in, but it's all like kind of closed off, boarded off. There's a door. You can see through the door glass windows, and there's basically like not boarded off, but it's kind of like, you know, there's no one there, and it's kind of shielded with like partitions, if you like. And all around the entrance, you would not believe the amount of A4 paper splattered around everywhere, all around it. A4 paper, Her Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service, this, that. It's like literally like every wall space is covered with some sort of pamphlet propaganda. Like, you know, I think some people would refer it to like some sort of psychological intimidation. That splat, 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 splat. You know, don't come here, do this. You got to go over here. You got to go there. You got to do this way, that way, not this way. You can't come in here. So I enter this front door and I speak to the security guy, and he's basically like, "There's no point coming in, mate. We don't have a desk." I was like, "Right, okay." And I said, "Oh, look, over there, they've got one of the forms that I'd like to use. Oh, right, can I go in and can I just literally take 4 steps this way, get a form and leave?" He goes, no, you've got to come through the security door and empty your pockets and put it through the scanner. I was like, okay, fine. So I went through literally a scanner to do 4 steps to look at this literature, and that was kind of how I managed to get in the door, you know, by just saying I would like to look at the literature over there, see what form I can get. Otherwise, he was pretty much keen on me buggering off, which is fine. So anyway, I got there and I thought, so there is court in sessions. They go, yeah, but they're all private courts and stuff like that. I was like, oh, really? So he's trying to give me the fob off. There's no point. There's nothing going on. But I said to him, but you know, this is a public courthouse. What happens if I'd just like to sit in a building? He goes, oh, I sit in a courtroom. He says, well, you can't really do that. I said, well, of course you can sit in a public. This is public justice. You've got to be able to sit into the courthouse. Remember, this organisation has to have people. Or the public have to have access to it to see what's going on. Yeah, Star Chambers. They said you can't come in. You're basically back to the Star Chambers days. Yeah, where you can't have Google Star Chamber, learn what it's all about. It's private courts, no witnesses, and deals being done in closed doors, where you know it's pretty easy to shaft people when no one can witness the wrongdoings going on in the room. There's no recourse, you know. So here I thought, you know what, just let me have a little look. I'll sit in, I'll be quiet, I'll be well behaved. So I went up. You come down here and you go up some stairs and you end up on this. Like is it like a landing, I suppose you could say, or a hallway? And there's just a desk like by this window with some plump guy sitting behind it. I didn't pay him any attention, but I was looking at the listings. They got the listings up here, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So I'll just look at the listings. So there's nothing going on here, but they got the listings up. So despite the fact you can't speak to the staff in the building, right? They won't allow you, they won't serve you, they won't serve the public. Why won't they serve you? Because the society that is administrating the government has decided to withdraw the public counter service. They're not going to do that for you anymore. And it's been in place for about 2.5 years. The guy on the security gate says, so there's no, you know, yeah, we don't have a counter service. Everything's done online and telephone nowadays. You can't go into your public courthouse and get any kind of service in relation to hi, I would like to open court. No, it's not done like that anymore. And that's the rules of this society very much imposing their will upon the normal course of justice, because they get to determine the rules of how they run their society, and their society is in charge of the administration of normal people justice. As unfortunate or fortunate as that may be. Now, so I'm up here, and as I'm looking at the cause list, I'm seeing like all the names of all the lists. I normally look for like the busy court, so I can just sit in one court and get as much information from the proceedings as I can. And the guy on the desk here suddenly, in an Irish accent, starts talking to me like, "Oh, what are you doing here? Like, there's nothing going on here. All the courts are closed." I'm like, "What do you mean all courts are closed? They're all private hearings." I'm like, "What do you mean? They're all family court matters?" Yes, they're all family court matters. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I look at the wall and I'm like, such and such business limited versus John Doe. I was like, I turned to the guy, so I just challenged him then. I said, "Oh, really? So that's an interesting name to call your daughter, isn't it? Such and such business limited." He goes, "Oh yeah, that's nearly over." And I said, "Okay, so what court's that in? Court 1. Okay, so I can go in there and sit in there." No, you can't just go and sit in there. I said, "What do you mean I can't just go and sit in there?" "No, you have to get the judge's permission then." So I said, "Well, I better go down there and ask him then." He goes, No, you can't go in." I said, "Look, mate, it's a public building. The public have a right to access and sit in and overhear what's going on in these public buildings." And he goes, "No, well, it's what did he say then? He says, "Oh, but it's almost over." I said, "So is the court still going on?" He goes, "No, it's almost over." So I said, "Oh, so it is still going on then?" So he's trying to use his like intimidation. He's trying to like fob me off. He's trying every little trick under the book, because remember, he is employed and paid by the same people who run and employ and run and administrate the criminal justice system. So he's very much there trying to say, no, please don't, nothing going on here. Don't come in this room, because this room you might actually get justice. Yeah, that's right. Because when there's a judge seated in these courthouses, the judge essentially, when they're seated in court, you don't disturb the session, but when they're in court, as Carl Lentz has done, even he said he walked back into one of his court sessions and brought his attention to the judge. And the judge obviously said, in Carl's story, the judge actually stopped what he did and said, "Oh, Carl, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?" and Carl was saying how he was in the middle of someone else's case, and the judge stopped that proceedings just to speak to Carl, and it was like at an interesting point where the lady was booing her eyes out, Carl, booing her eyes out, and in the middle of like giving some damn good evidence and convincing everyone that this is an injustice, and like, oh, boo-hoo. And the judge just says, "Hey, Carl, what's up?" And that's when Carl, I'll paraphrase what happened, but it's that Carl says, I can't really. You were telling me something about what was it? Oh yeah, it was about his moonshine charge, where he said, "I don't really understand what you were saying to me. Like, if I plead guilty now, I won't go to prison, but if I plead guilty later, then I will go to prison, or I will get handed over to the feds." And he says, "Well, while you're in my state, you're under my jurisdiction, and if you plead not guilty, then you have to go off and trial in their jurisdiction. But if you plead guilty now, I deal with you now, and then next week you'll come back and we'll overturn the decision." So that was a specific example that the judge was given to Carl from the bench, while court was in session. So, you have to be courteous at all times, because you don't want to rattle people off, especially in England. It's, that's probably a bit more acceptable in America, but in England, there's a bit more restrained, I think, in terms of just fucking gate crashing court cases. It's a bit hardcore. So anyway, I walked down here, and there was some people, actually some public, were in the corridor here, and they were overhearing my lovely exchange with this rather crass Irish guy, who was the usher for 4 courtrooms, and he was a stinker. I've never come across such a stinker of an usher in any of my any court I've been to. I've never come against such an abrasive usher, and So I got to the end of this corridor, and as I said, well, I'm going to go in because it's public courthouse. I'm going to have justice. So what he did, he called downstairs to the guy here who let me in. He was the security guy. He was fine, but he was getting no answer on the phone. And I thought, what, I don't want to cause a scene here. I mean, by rights, I shouldn't have been intimidated. I should have just gone into the courtroom and sat down and and allowed the judge to see me getting dragged out by security guard. The judge would go, "Why is he being dragged out?" I say, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm just here to watch." And then, the judge would have to fucking step in then, because he can't allow wrongdoings to happen in his presence. But, well, if he does, then fucking hey. I've got a claim against the judge there. So anyway, there's some public here, but nothing. They were just more as confused as everyone else was. So okay, I decided, look, you know what? I've got enough information that I need. It's clear what's going on in this building is that the legal society are absolutely trying to not have you entertain any bit of law in this building as you can, with all the wallpaper. You know, they've wallpapered the whole building with HMTCS nonsense. So that you know, go here, go there, go away, don't come in this building. And then they put arseholes in place on, well, not on the door, but they've obviously put a security presence on the door trying to fob people off from the first point of entry. Then you go in, after getting past him, you then have the usher who absolutely couldn't, you know, he couldn't be more abrasive. You know, he might as well have a balaclava and a gun. And then, you know, if you then try to go in to see a public hearing, he'll call the boys in from downstairs, and then, you know, they'll promptly have you removed from a public building. Yeah, and this is what I explained to the guy. This is a public building, mate. This is a library, right? If I'm going into a library, okay, the legal society can, you know, they can shut down the counter desk in the library, right? But the doors will still be open because you're allowed access to it. So you go into your public library and there's no staff. What do you do? Well, I'm here to look for a book. What are you going to do? Well, I'll have to sort it out myself. Oh, look, history section, that's the book I want. Go down, you sit on your beanbag in the corner on the table, and you read your book. And when you're finished, you put it back, and then you leave. People there or not, who cares? And it's very much what's happening with these courthouses. It's a tool of intimidation where they've taken away the counter service so that you don't know how to access court. You don't know your rights. You don't know the protocols of what this building is actually for, and it's for your service. It's for you to get justice. One of the first, you know, the first rule of, or the first point of government is the administration of justice and the protection of your life and private property. That's essentially what it is. And I'll refer you back to my, there's a video I've done about Theresa May letting that go in Parliament. And so when you go into this building, there's nothing stopping you from walking in, going where you like. It is your building as much as it is the security guard's building. He has no more and no less control over people going in that building. As long as you behave yourself, you've not got weapons. I can accept your job to do that, that's fine. But I'm going in here, mate, and you're not going to touch me, because if you touch me, that's assault. I've done nothing wrong. I'm here to, you know, to enjoy my building. You know? And then with the usher upstairs, you know, he can threaten and talk to you and, you know, mind game you all you like in order to convince you not to go into a courtroom. But at the end of the day, mate, this is justice. This is where the people come to get justice. You know, I said to him, you know, what happens if I've got a court meeting next? You know, I might have a court case coming up. I just want to sit in a courthouse just to get like used to how this whole thing works. You know, get used to the setting, get used to like how the people speak, how the judges are. You know, just like for experience purposes. And it's like, oh no. It's a complete nonsense, and I completely blew his cover. But when he sat down at his desk and started calling down to security, this is why I don't want people. Like, he could say anything to these guys downstairs. Like, hey, I've got a guy here being like, you know, he's threatening me and he won't get out. So now, you know, the security come running upstairs, and then it's like him. It's 3 versus me. So if you are going to go to these buildings, it's nice to call a friend. At least get 3 or 4 of you to go together. Just say, yeah, we've got a court case coming up. Thinking about opening court. Just want to get an idea of how it all works, how it feels. You know, get a view of the ambience. Just sit down and be quiet. You know, and there you go. So instead of causing a scene, I've already challenged this guy enough. I'd already busted him, and you know, I wasn't really going to get anything that I wanted because the counter's closed when I was told to go to the county court to speak to their counter. So remember, you know, the business end of the government's arm, the criminal side, still has their counters up and running, but the public justice side of it have their counters closed. Yeah. So anyway, I walked out and thought, you know what, that was amazing. And just as I walked out, I turned on the stairs and said to the guy, I said, you know what, mate, you've just made a witness out of me. And he has made a witness out of me, because this is essentially a conspiracy in my view. They're conspiring to block people's rights. So, you know, they're blocking your rights to justice. You know, all of these little acts all filter into the big society, trying to say, no, come our way. You can't go this way. Or if you want to get access to this kind of justice, you have to do it through our civil forms. You have to do it in our prescribed way, so that you can't hold our society to account, and our smooth running of the big society's, rules, their smooth running of their government applies to all people. Well, I wouldn't say equally, but you know, at least it kind of has the illusion of being equal. So anyway, so after I got kicked out of here, essentially, I walked back to here. And I was like, wow, I've gone from really good customer service to a fucking horror show. And I just went back in here and thought, wow. I was just like really shocked. I was just like, wow, that's really quite disappointing, really. So I went upstairs and I went back up to the counter up here and had a nice little chat with the people there, explained what happened. This time a different guy came up to me as a chap, and I explained to him in very calm terms the whole indictment process, what I was expecting people, member of the public, having access to justice. I wish to relay an indictment, which could have all been nonsense. But until you go in and experience and learn for yourself, then you don't know what's going on. So anyway, I went to the desk. A lady came out and she was like, "Yeah, okay, I can't advise you legally." I said, "Look, I don't want any legal advice. You can advise me on the law, but you can't advise me on the legal. So just let's keep it simple here." And this is where you kind of realise that pretty much everything that's going on in criminal land is legal, because the criminal realms of these law stems from the written codes that have formed since 1275. That's all part of their legal society codes, rules, and statutes. And I don't know if I have it up. I did have it up, but let me. It was literally, if you look at the hang on, where was it? It's the legislation, the criminal. Was it the 2003? Or was it 2013? But anyway, it was either 2003 or 2003, 2013, 2003 criminal law acts legislation that they have to put on the internet. They publish all their stuff so that plebs like us can try and read it, but we can't interpret it. But what they basically said, that there can be no changes. Well, what they said, I said what they wrote in their code, which I can't interpret. But as a person reading a foreign language, this is what I saw. So don't take this for granted. It was something like, if there's any changes to the codes or the statute or the law, if you like, in this respect, it has to be put through the police, the head of police, the bar association, the law society, and the legal society, or something like that. So there was 5 different branches of essentially the same associations that make up this big society. So if there's any change to this legislature, you have to run it past all the societal members, so that the big society cannot have any slip-ups or any mess-ups in the code. And it goes past every expert that there can be, just to make sure, yep, that sounds right, this sounds right. Oh, someone puts their hand up, no, you can't do that because of this reason. And then they'll go, oh yeah, okay, good. Thanks for pointing out. We'll have to amend it or tweak it a little bit. So that is essentially what happened. So going back and then realise again, you are banging your head against the wall. Criminal prosecutions, they have to start in the magistrate's court, even if it's an indictment. And the thing is, there's lots of rules and codes and cock blocks, for want of a better word, that if you mess up anywhere along the line as a layman, the criminal procedure rules in their little domain, if you mess up in any sense, shape, way, form, or other, then you're going to have your case thrown out. It's going to be a joke. Then they won't stand for that. That's why people have to go and learn criminal law as a barrister, as a lawyer. And once you become a barrister or a lawyer or a solicitor, you normally have to swear an oath of allegiance to the courts and the system in place to keep it all running. You can't then be trained and educated by these people and turn your back on them and go and start hammering their own society in their own criminal courts. It just won't work. And also that's why they have funny, interesting things like, the director of public prosecutions can basically step in on any criminal prosecutions if it's not in the public interest to keep it going, and they can take it over, and obviously then they'll look to discharge it. So yeah, let's not waste our time with these things, and let's go back to the shithole justice, because essentially let them have their little fun and game. Let them play house, and all you can do is get justice with in relation to compensation for wrongs done. And going back to our wrongs, we're looking at torts. Okay, so tort is the French word. Okay, we the German Saxon word that we always use. Hey, you can't do that. That's wrong. So you've got wrongdoers. You've got torts. Okay, tort doers, which is a tortfeasor. Wrongdoer and a tortfeasor is like the difference between apfel in German and apple in English. So it's just a nuance. It's just it's a twisting. A torture, extortion is the root word, being a twisting. Extort, twisting. X would be a Roman prefix, and then you've got tort being the core word. And then in terms of wrongdoing, a wrong, a rang, a rinsing, it's an Anglo-Saxon word of a twisting. So essentially it's two words for twisting. But the Norman French invasion, obviously, le tout. They want us to say tort, but we say wrong. The people say wrong. But they're not going to acknowledge people. So you can put in either a claim for tort or you can put in a claim for wrong, and then you would CF the tort. A tort in common law jurisdictions is a civil wrong, so it's not a criminal wrong. So it doesn't belong to the or even better. Where's the other one? Oh, I didn't get that. I had the High Courts, the Royal Courts of Justice. I've got to get that because that has impact. This is just a classic way of giving away the game. The more grander the building, the more you see this kind of nonsense, quite often the further you are, you're going to get from justice. Yeah, this is 1885 when they abolished for their society. They abolished the Queen's Bench. They abolished this and that. And they keep merging everything into this. Is called the Royal Courts of Justice, where the High Court is, and the High Court is basically the catch-all for a lot of different courts that they just merged. So things like High Court divisions. So you have the Queen's Bench division. You have the High Court. You have the Family division. You have the High Court. Oh, there's another division, but who cares? I wouldn't ever. I think Chancery's in here as well. Chancery's an interesting one. I'm still studying about that, so we'll crack on about that another day. So where we are, back at tort. So tort is a civil wrong, yeah. So it's a civil wrong that causes someone to suffer a loss or harm, resulting in, it says here, legal liability, because of course it would be, when they're defining it as a tort, it now comes back into the legal realms, the civil realms, as a tortuous act. The person who commits an act is a tortfeasor or wrongdoer. Although crimes may be torts, the cause of legal action is not necessarily a crime. So although crimes may be laws, let me just crassly translate this. Although crimes may be laws, the cause of legal action is not necessarily a crime. So prosecuting under the law, I suppose the law of the land in a certain respect. So the law of the land was not necessarily going to be a crime, because the law that we delve with the people is not really about sticking people in cages and pointing sticks at them. It's just about, look, you're supposed to forgive your brother and all that kind of stuff. But where, it's like taking the piss and you need compensation back, or you require, more important, a remedy, a rebalancing of the scales. Yeah, just look at my, you need the rebalancing of the scales of justice. Yeah, look, you've taken something from me, buddy. Now I need it rebalancing. Yeah, so you're going to present your case to court, and obviously justice is blind. She's got a blindfold on, and if you take the piss in court, they will throw. If you come with a false claim, then you're going to get the double-edged sword. Is going to come around and swipe you. So don't. Justice works both ways. So, frivolous matters will you'll get your arse handed to you on a plate. So don't take, the justice system, don't be frivolous or jokey about it. I mean, every court has a jester, but at the end of the day, it's your arse on the line. So that's essentially, it's quite nicely highlighted here, even though it's Wikipedia, and I apologise for going to Wikipedia, but I mean, you can do as much wide reading around this as you like. The less sometimes the better. And also it says harm here due to negligence. So you've got all kinds of intentional or negligent harm, Obviously, this would never really have people go to prison. If someone kills your family, you just put in a bill for the cost of one family. I require compensation for one family. But obviously, people are very tempted to say, well, let's go Judeo on them. Let's go old school. Let's get some hardcore justice. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Let's get carnal. Let's get bodily. Let's punish the flesh for the damage done to flesh. So it's, these are some waiting and standing by. They love a bit of that. But if you just say, look, whatever, c'est la vie, but I need compensation. I require compensation. Let's come to the shitty old public courthouse and get things done. And I think that's my 2 cents about my experiences of that day. If there's any more, I'll make another video. I know it's a long video, but it's a testimony, man. You've got to explain it as clearly and as concisely as you can, and recall, most importantly, recall the events, and hopefully by expressing it here to you via YouTube, the patient of you will listen and learn, and the people who aren't patient will not listen and learn, and will just carry on as normal, allowing these guys to administrate their lives. Okay, well, that'll be it for today. Hope you enjoy, and I'll speak to you soon.